Good afternoon, everyone. All public meetings are live streamed and recorded. Any verbal or written information provided may be included in public documents as per the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. So for anyone watching the live stream, you'll notice a few differences. We have doubled the distance between all the councillors. So we are practicing our social distancing. It's going to be perhaps a little disruptive on the live stream for the camera angles. Unfortunately, administration is now unable to sit at the table and they are behind Councillor Lang. So when admin gives a response or an answer, they will not be on camera, but hopefully the audio will work and you'll be able to hear them very clearly. Any questions from council about the new format? Okay. I would like to call the meeting to order at 1:05 p.m. And the adoption of the agenda. Can I have someone move, please? Councillor Lougheed? I would so move. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Item number 3, COVID-19 business continuity status and update.
Good afternoon, Council. So I will hand this over to Christine, Eric, Kurt. We have initiated a partial ECC. We did that on March 17th, and truly that was for business continuity. The categorization of staff, resources, tools, and ensuring that we protect our community and our workers. So for more detail, I'll gladly hand it over to Christine, provide council with more of a detailed update. And if you have any further questions, I'd be glad to address.
There we go. Thanks, Rick. Not sure what level of detail council wants me to get into, so please feel free to ask questions or stop me if you'd like, if I'm going too far into the weeds for you. So as council aware, and Rick mentioned, we activated our ECC as of 1300 yesterday, March 17th. And within the ECC, we've also put in that social distancing and sanitization procedures. And previous to that ECC activation, as a leadership team, we gathered and the county put in place those COVID-19 protocols for councillors and employees, which you would have seen come over email, essentially asking for 14-day self-isolation after travel outside of Canada, returning after March 12th, following Alberta Health's guidelines in that case. We also asked all non-essential work and work-related travel outside of Clear County's borders be prohibited. We also asked any travel bookings for work be canceled up until April 30th. We've asked all non-essential public and staff events to be canceled until the end of March, and of course we're going to continue to evaluate that, and obviously with the state of COVID-19 as it stands, we're likely to extend that into April or further into the future. Current staff that are working have been asked to monitor, of course, for COVID-19 symptoms, and if they're displaying any symptoms, they're immediately to not attend work, do the self-assessment tool, and in accordance with Alberta Health's recommendations. In employees planning personal travel, we're obviously at that point asked to make considerations for that based on the Public Health Agency of Canada and Alberta Health's recommendations. That's since changed with border closures. We've also put a focus on mental health and making sure people know where the resources are and to talk to their coworkers or their managers in terms of any stress that COVID-19 is causing. And again, we've preempted or ended any non-essential staff meetings or employee gatherings. We updated those protocols at March 17th in the afternoon with the intent to close this building and all the county buildings to the public access as of noon yesterday. And county services continue by appointment only. Those signs have been posted on websites, social media, the doors. If couriers come to the door, there's a phone number they can call. There's still access. There's just a safe work procedure in place to do a mini screening to say, you know, the same thing we'd be asking our employees. If you're traveling, if you're sick, please don't come into the office. But other than that, anybody that's away will be reporting to HR. So over the course of the day and a half, almost 2 days that we've been having our Emergency Coordination Center in operation, we've developed objectives to help manage the centralization of resources. So that's staff, assets, things like computers, cell phones, things that you can take to work remotely. We've centralized a list and prioritized based on essential services and core services, and developed workplace sanitization strategies, some remote workplace procedures, updating safe work practices as this is a changing time, and continuing that business continuity planning into today. We're also working on internal and external communication strategies. We want to be able to provide both our internal stakeholders, our staff, our counselors, as well as our external stakeholders. That could be anyone from our regional partners to like emergency response associations, to the general public, information about COVID-19, what the county's doing, but more importantly, what Alberta Health is recommending people do. So as a subject matter expert in the jurisdiction over health, we're certainly, if people are asking for information, we're putting them through to that alberta.ca/COVID-19 website, which has a multitude of information for people to access. And other than that, we are looking at more working from home and developing a rotational workplace strategy. We're not quite there yet in terms of figuring out who's going to be where, but that was something we're going to be working on in this operational period. So we certainly have plans in play. Some of it's happening through attrition as people are not coming in because they've traveled or they're sick. But we're looking as of today in terms of absenteeism. I would categorize it as modest. For our staff that are sick, we're at about 4%, and working from home, we're up to 13%. So
13%.
13%, and that's just a point in time. It could be different by tomorrow. So that's just a point in time for today. And I think that's it. We'll continue to plan for business continuity and resourcing at this point in terms of county essential services. Services continue. Services are still available by appointment, and encourage the public to use our electronic means to contact staff and council via email, phone, website, social media. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from Council for Administration? Councillor Laird.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you to staff. These are challenging times to work through, and it's extraordinary measures that we're taking to ensure that we have continuity of business. So I wanted to thank you as well. I guess my first question, because I have a few of them, is has staff completed a staff skills inventory with regard to comparable or comparable skills between interdepartmental, such as if we had a shortage in snowplow operators, looking at other departments that might be able to fill that void so that we don't see a reduction in services? That's my first question, and then I'll have a couple subsequent ones after that.
Informally, yes, those conversations have happened, especially with folks that require working from home for whatever reason. It could be family, it could be travel, it could be isolation. And that's definitely taking place, and it's going to form part of that centralized staff list. We're not 100% there yet in terms of how we're doing it, but certainly interdepartmentally, I know there's been discussions, this person in Ag Services may be able to provide a truck driving service for Public Works. So those conversations are happening, but certainly we'll be looking to have that more formalized in a centralized location, in a master list, essentially.
Subsequent question, thank you. My second question is, what is the effect of this COVID program or on our planned projects? How is that affecting our planned projects?
Well, good morning. Thank you. I'm glad I wrote it down this morning. I anticipated that question because really, it's not business as usual for us, you know, absolutely, especially in the planning stages and some of the stakeholder feedback we've had from our engineers, consultants, etc. This is it's really affecting everybody at every level. The best part is we're absolutely available to still complete our essential services, which is our primary focus. Our subsequent capital planning, though, is definitely getting hit and will likely be delayed just due to this robust planning session that we do at this time of the year. So just as a quick update from the infrastructure side, I'll let Kurt touch on his and the operations as well. So myself, I've been assigned as the operational section chief for the ECC for our partial activation. So that means I also very much trying to also complete the duties as director of public works infrastructure. So trying to wear two hats there today. As of this morning, we've already lost 3 staff that are being working from home. 1 due to isolation from travel, 2 as a precautionary measure because of symptomatics due to family. So we don't want to take a chance of having somebody come into the office there when their family members, close family members, are symptomatic to this type of condition. So that includes my construction supervisor, my facility supervisor, and a construction foreman. So just to give it a scale, these are 3 highly qualified, highly skilled members that I'm having to work and coordinate through at home. So it's also tasking the other staff that are existing to try to keep those folks working at home, you know, with connection with the people that are here in order to try to keep that business continuity going. But we're absolutely doing our best, and they are doing a good job. Our IT group has been fantastic, setting them up with the equipment that they need to try to get as much impact as from a working at home environment as they can. Our gravel road rehabilitation planning, for example, so my last construction foreman is now my facilities supervisor. So he's in charge of all our facilities as well as the more robust sanitization practices that we've been implementing through the ECC, through all of our buildings and remote buildings. So he's wearing a new hat. He's the second one. Actually, my other construction foreman that was wearing that hat yesterday, he fell, family member fell ill, so as a precautionary measure, he's working from home. So we're really broadening our skills and going through the list of people and getting them to work. So in regards to the base pave, we're still on track there. We're looking at late March for that. We don't know if that tender, if it makes sense to tender. We're going to continue to evaluate that with our stakeholders or engineers to see if they're even staffed to be able to provide that service for us. And then the next question we have to ask is, if we put out a tender or an RFP to the industry, how are they going to be able to respond to those tenders and RFPs in any type of capacity? So we're really evaluating that day to day. I know there's 2 RFPs that we've already extended. One was for waste. Myself, we had the broadband. It's already been requested by at least 2 proponents that be extended by a minimum of 2 weeks. So we've already done that extension, and we'll continue to evaluate that as we move forward. Asphalt overlay. Fortunately, there again, contractor pending. There would be late March before they start, which we're coming into. So we'll have to see if they can resource properly for that. The historic core, that work is scheduled for, they've done as much as they can do right now. So hopefully if we get past the hump on this event, that they'll be able to start, you know, late spring, early summer there on that work up there. The Heritage Center, we've had some renovations that have been ongoing. That has ceased. All renovations in this building have been ceased. Those contractors have been sent home for the safety of themselves and our workers. The Bighorn store, we did have a successful proponent in demolition and removal. That work has since been postponed until a later date. Old staff houses in Nordegg, the demolition there, we've done some additional testing for hazardous materials testing, and it has come back that we have to do some mitigation measures with that. So that's been also postponed to have the mediation mitigation measures to come out there and deal with some of those issues. The land acquisition, we do have a signed agreement now with the owner, so we are working with the due diligence clauses. Hopefully, the external resources that we're using be able to get that capacity on. So we do have a condition date of April 27th and possession schedule for May 15th. So we'll have a more detailed update for you, a written detail for you at the next council meeting. But these are just my brief updates. Leslieville Public Services Building, planned on presenting project plan to council with some cost estimates there on next Tuesday. Broadband, we have extended that RFP to May 7th. And the good news is our broadband technologist has accepted the position. As for the start date, yet to be determined when we can get him. He's coming from Ontario, so there'll be, as this progresses, we'll continue to evaluate when we'll be able to get him in-house and get working on that project. Road bans, which are looming, we ban some of our structures, our surface road structures there, start usually typically toward the end of March, which, once we start seeing some consistent days with plus temperatures. So we like to be a little bit ahead of that curve there. So once we're seeing some consistent warming days, that's when we put our road bans on. So they'd be expected. I think they were March 23rd last year, and then they came off, I believe, June 5th. So that is the timeline that we usually. It's consistent year to year. So we're coming up to that timeline pretty soon. But we've been experiencing cooler temperatures. Other municipalities are putting the road bans on. I believe Red Deer County, Nehill County are putting theirs on the 23rd. Mountain View County has a blanket date of March 15th every year. That's how they implement their road bans. We use frost probes in our surface roads, so we monitor them. We have about 1.7, 1.8 meters of frost in our surface roads right now. And we watch basically the condition, temperatures, and that's what drives when we put our road bans on. So it's really condition based. With that kind of summarizes my Public Works update for council. Any questions for me before I turn it over to Kurt?
I can wait.
Okay. And because we do not have good cameras, make sure you introduce yourself. So, because people can't see who is speaking on the camera, so your name and your position, so everyone's following.
Good afternoon, Council. Again, my name is Kurt Magnus. I'm Director of Public Works Operations. So further to Eric's explanation on the infrastructure side of things, with respect to capital projects as associated with Public Works Operations, as of this moment, it is still status quo. And I say that for two simple reasons. One is many of our projects just involve the engineering side aspect to it, and as such, that can continue. In terms of what's going on, it's not in any way inhibiting the ability for our consulting firms to carry on with the engineering needed to complete many of these projects. Number two is for the capital projects that are within the realm of Public Works Operations, many of them won't, if they do start up here, if we continue on this path, typically start up in August. I take bridges, for example, because many of our bridge structure replacements are confined due to regulatory restrictions. Okay, so it's usually late summer, middle summer before they're able to start up because of those regulatory restrictions. We already have some projects on the go. For example, is the water well number 8 in Nordig. They are drilling this week, actually, and I believe they have completed drilling. Okay, so the exposure there to individuals in the firm in terms of exposing themselves to others is very minimal, so they've moved forward with that. The Condor Lagoon upgrades, the continuation of that project. The intent is to start in spring here, and again, that's very isolated in terms of the contractor themselves, so we're going to be in continued contact and discussions with the contractor in terms of finishing that project, but in terms of exposure, it'll be essentially individuals within that organization that's going to complete that project, so we'll see where that is come later April, early May. Again, just to reiterate, a lot of these projects are typically towards the end of the summer, so again, I'll reiterate that we'll play it by ear for now on that side of it. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. My name's Christine Haggart. I'm Clearwater County's Director of Emergency and Legislative Services, and I'm also the Director of Emergency Management for the county. I didn't give a departmental update. I just gave an ECC update earlier. So if I could speak to just a couple quick things as well. In terms of peace officer program, I would say limited disruption to service as it stands. We have put in additional SOG procedures for PPE to mitigate, so our staff are comfortable continuing on working. When it comes to fire, we had a little bit higher than the county's average in terms of those who are away. We're at about 8% unavailable. We're still monitoring on a day-to-day basis. We've asked members to keep us updated with the nature of paid on call. We never usually know who's available, but we're keeping a closer tab on it. Day-to-day, we've asked people to update us so we can guarantee response from any of the 5 stations. We have heard through fire that some of the MFR protocols related to COVID, known COVID or presumptive COVID calls have been actually removed from provincially from fire response. So if there's a known COVID call, they shouldn't be going. Of course, there's still opportunity for an unknown when they go to a typical call, such as a motor vehicle collision, et cetera. Members have been reminded of proper PPE, which is personal protective equipment, as well as BSI, which is body substance isolation equipment, as well as all of their SOGs related to keeping them safe, and as well the decontamination reminders and protocols. Other than that, I think that's it for fire. And of course, emergency management we're hopping in terms of planning, so we'll continue that process and keep council apprised of what's going on.
Councillor Laird, I believe you had another question or two.
Thank you. And I appreciate the updates because it demonstrates the flexibility that staff is using in a very fluid situation, and that it can be very challenging. So again, thank you. I guess mine is more of my last point is more a comment with regard to having updates provided to, I will say, our community and our members in our community. And I think that having a daily update would be very helpful, at least during the work days, because this COVID is moving very quickly. It's a very fluid situation, and I think it would be nice to have at least a 1-minute video with the same type of information that you just provided, and perhaps that's something we as council can assist with. We're seeing that from other leaders, and I think that we should be delivering on that same thing, starting with the emergency, I was going to say operations center, that's old term, for the center of operations for how we're managing this, this pandemic. So I think that that would be good information for us to be able to share with our residents. They want to know what we're doing, that whilst they are making appointments to come in, we are not closed, we are providing service, and that we are trying to keep things as, with least degradation of services possible. But there is a lot of moving parts, and I think our residents need to see what we are doing, and that should be done via video. So I guess I'm looking to the rest of my council for, it needs to be like a 1-minute little video daily, just to let folks know what we're doing.
Other questions or comments from council? Councillor Lang.
Without having much time to consider what Councillor Liard has suggested, I'm just thinking I realize it's only a 1-minute video, but it might take a fair bit of time to, get all the directors together to make this video. So my thoughts are maybe just if there's a change, like I think probably what we're doing today is going to be same tomorrow and the day after, but if something changes and some stricter guidelines come down from Alberta Health, Clearwater County will probably adapt those. So maybe that's the time that a news release or a video should be put out if there is a change. Otherwise, it might be a little bit onerous. Just my initial thoughts.
Any, Deputy Reeve Swanson?
While I can appreciate the undertaking of Cammie's suggestion to do a daily update, I look at it as a reassurance. And I look at it as if you're saying the same message every day, that's a good thing. That means there is no change. And it's to allow our residents and anybody watching it, and it doesn't have to be long. It just needs to say, we're on the same track as we were yesterday, things are still good. It's just that reassurance in a calm manner, because there are people that are on edge, and it's just it can be the same person. It can be Christine every day, because she is our emergency manager, and just saying, okay, as we are standing today, it's business as usual. Just highlighting the fact that if you need, and a reminder, because not everybody watches the video every day. So I'm good with the daily, like as far as during the business week. Weekends are totally, unless something really falls off the wheel, like Sunday. In regards to our other levels of government, but I can appreciate just a high level reassurance of what we're doing in the county, and if there's anything new to be said. So I'm actually, it doesn't have to be. I'm sure, Christine, you'll get better every day. It'll start off as 2 minutes, but it may end up being a minute by things go on. So if that would good, I endorse that. I like that idea.
Councillor Vandermeer.
Yeah, listening to the previous 2 or 3 comments, I think we do need regular updates. But I guess my issue is that this is going to continue for quite a while. So my thought is that we should have regular updates every Tuesday or Friday, once a week, and certainly we would certainly update if there were any changes. I think we need to provide regular messaging so that our community knows when to look for these messages. I don't believe we need it every day, but I would certainly like to see it regularly and maybe once a week.
Thank you. And I know all of council knows that we're also scheduled for a workshop following this council meeting to discuss social media. So perhaps you continue the discussion for the COVID county updates for that workshop, and because it will fit into some other issues as well we have with social media. So back to COVID-19, other questions for administration? Well, I've got a couple bits of information. First of all, I had a talk with Mayor Rimmer of Caroline this morning. I called him up and just asked him if there's anything new in Caroline he would like for me to bring back to council. He said everything is as normal can be at this time. Everyone in town, as far as he knows, is following AHS guidelines. The bar has shut down, just like AHS requested. The library is now closed. I believe people can contact library staff and order books, and they'll be put outside for people, but they are maintaining the social distance. The Caroline Hub, I believe, is completely closed down at this time. So we just we reaffirm to one another the need to have good communication between our municipal partners. So he and I will continue to be chatting every few days, and with any new development that comes along for either the county or the village. I do have a question for Christine. With the state of emergency that Red Deer County and the city of Calgary, and I should say the city of Red Deer and other municipalities have placed, what extra authority does that give the municipalities? And do you see a point in the future where Clearwater should be considering that?
Thank you, Reeve Hoven. So for municipalities, what a state of local emergency does is provide some extraordinary powers that we don't have in normal times. We have declared states of local emergency in times of evacuation for floods or fires. So essentially, a SOL would provide the opportunity to fix prices if we found our businesses within our jurisdiction were raising prices because of hoarding. We can conscript persons and equipment, enter property and buildings without a warrant, force evacuation. Again, powers that wouldn't normally be within the scope of a municipality. At this time, administration wouldn't recommend a state of local emergency being declared until such time that we deem that those powers are required. So many of those powers under that Emergency Management Act and declaring a state of local emergency can actually be voluntarily achieved through good public messaging. And like you mentioned, Mayor Rimmer said, the Village of Caroline isn't having an issue. I haven't heard of any issues amongst Clearwater County as well. So if you do hear of anything, please pass that along to administration and we can review and make a better recommendation perhaps at that time. When it comes to a state of emergency, which would be that provincial level of emergency, which I don't believe, unless things have changed between the time we started the meeting, hasn't happened yet in Alberta. That gives the province similar powers. So if we get to that point, then we could still declare a state of local emergency, but the province would have already enacted that legislation so that they can prescribe those same things I talked about earlier. Does that answer the question, Reeve Hoven?
I think so. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Administration, any other items about relation to the COVID-19 before we end this agenda item? Councillor Duncan.
And just a bit of an update, I did get an email, probably Teresa did as well, that FCSS at some point will be getting some funding that they may be the ones administering and handing out into the community for people in need. So that might be part of that committee's work in the upcoming future.
I know the province announced extra funding to municipalities through FCSS. Have we received any word on the additional funding coming to our area?
We don't have that information at this time. We do know that it was a $60 million contribution. We heard in Premier Kenney's reports that it would be directed through nonprofits and FCSS. What amount, we don't know. I know Matt in Agriculture and Community Services has reached out to FCSS as well to see if they've received that information. It is a regional service within Clearwater County administered by the town of Rocky. So we have contacted them, but we don't have an answer for that yet. There's quite a bit of social service and provincial and federal supports information that are out in the public, but not everything is known at this time. It's going to be some time, I think, before administration can sift through all of that information to be able to provide an update in terms of what grant dollars are going to look like and whether municipalities will have a role in providing that to community. Again, most of the information can be found on that alberta.ca/COVID-19 website. It is being updated regularly. Information that was there yesterday isn't there today, and there's new information being added all the time.
The email that I have from Andrea Vasallo indicates that there's 30 million from the province, 14 will be outside of Edmonton and Calgary, and we don't know how much Clearwater will receive. The one question I had that looks like it's answered here is if that money will have to fall under FCSS guidelines, because there's lots of things that don't fall under FCSS, like transportation, et cetera, if we wanted to help people with that. But it says it's likely that it's going to be outside of general FCSS guidelines, just using FCSS as the way to distribute the funds. One question that Andrew has asked, that just for us to be aware, or if you see any needs out in the community, pass those on to FCSS or a member of FCSS, and there may be ways that we can help once that funding is available.
Is there a way we could have that promoted through social media and on our Facebook page if there are members in need, that we can promote that phone number and that contact information? Because so many people, at least outside of Rocky Mountain, I think a lot of people do not know what FCSS does, and some of them might not even know it exists as a community resource. So if we could please have administration share that information. Murray, do you have, I know Premier Kenny had some, I'm trying to think of the right word, bleak financial and economic news yesterday. Do you have any thoughts on his comments on the possible economic repercussions? Because we are kind of in a perfect storm between the Russian and Saudi price war, the COVID, and just the general economic malaise here in the province. How do you see that affecting the county in the future?
I have concerns. I don't have any definitive answers. I think we're going to have to watch and see, but we're going to have to look at how businesses are reacting to this. We know a lot of businesses are closing down based on Alberta health requirements and so forth. That's going to be hitting them hard. It's really going to depend on how long this lasts and how severe it becomes. So it is definitely going to be something that we need to continue to monitor, but it would be pure speculation at this time.
Thank you. Any further questions then before we move on the agenda? Mr. Emmons?
So, Rick Emmons, CAO, Clearwater. Maybe for council's consideration, one of the items that administration wanted to propose or put out to council for consideration was our regular scheduled council meetings. At this time, if you're comfortable with the setup that you see before you, maintaining social distancing, is that adequate now? Or would council consider canceling regularly scheduled council meetings effective March 25th to the 30th, and then revisit after that? The Municipal Government Act does allow for electronic communications. So section 199, subsection 1, a council meeting or council committee meetings may be conducted by means of electronic or other communication facilities if A, notice is given to the public, including the manner in which it's to be conducted, and B, if the facilities enable the public to watch or listen. And of course, with council going to live stream, that is an option. So administration would appreciate the dialogue at council level. On that, before council enters into that dialogue, I also wanted to add additional information to Reeve Hoven's question on our municipal partners. Clearwater County has reached out to our partners, particularly the town of Rocky, in regard to their wastewater and water treatment facilities. As council is well aware, we hold level 2 operators, which is accredited as high as the town of Rocky, and the ability, while people are here, if the town wishes, we would be glad to cross-train. A level 2 is an accreditation. It's not a familiarity with a specific plant. So the importance of getting that familiarity while people are here is imperative. So we've reached out, and reciprocally, our municipal neighbors have done so back. So good cooperation at a municipal level. And internally, we've adopted many different procedures to mitigate that as well. Our truck drivers are on different tasks, jobs, shifts, so they don't potentially cross each other, keeping core groups. Interdepartmental cooperation, as always, is extremely high. So the class 3s, for example, in ag, are getting together with Public Works and getting those orientations on different pieces of equipment. Because again, a truck driver is not just a truck driver, every piece of equipment is different. So many different levels of cross-training, and those statements go from every position throughout the organization, administrative, so we are definitely looking at that business continuity and maintaining all services at this time, but as Christina stated, it is very fluid. and it could get down to core services, but right now it is all.
Thank you. So with what's on the screen right now, notice is given to the public of the meeting. Is that, so let's say we decided not to cancel any meetings, but on Monday afternoon, we decided, because of the changing situation, to go to an electronic meeting. Do we have to then give further notice that it's not going to be held in person, but just electronically? Or does just notice of the meeting cover that? Is the question clear? Like, are there any further notices we have to give if we're only doing it electronically?
I would suggest Reeve Hoven that it would be clear to make it, the administrative burden would simply be more notice better, because right now we have delegations, we have other people outside of these walls that would have to be notified. So for that reason, I would suggest notification would be fairly important.
Okay.
From a logistic point of view, I would say your standard notice and inject the fact that it will be closed, all that would be required.
Okay. Is the IT staff prepared for council to have an electronic meeting with 7, there might be 8 or 9 people connected somehow through their computers or through their phones, and then it is my assumption we would try to record that meeting in some way to fulfill our obligation, our council made obligation to live stream. Is IT prepared for that?
So at this time, I would suggest no. They are researching on the probability, or even if council should choose. So we are administratively following up on that. What is the capacity? So at this time, Reeve Hoven, I would say no, but that can change in the future as well, because we are looking at what mitigations it would take to put it in place if council should choose, and what that would look like and bring it back to council.
So other comments or questions about the possibility of canceling our meetings together and doing a live online meeting? Councillor Duncan.
I would be, I guess, more in favor of, at least for March 24th, continuing as we are today, just because we're probably not going to be ready to do that. We have just one delegation that day that probably could be pushed, or, yeah, I would say push that one just because it's probably pretty cramped here to have delegations as well as regular staff and councillors in the room at one time. And just take it from there, maybe.
Okay. Other comments? Councillor Laird.
You make a good point with regard to, some of the limitations of our ability to do the live streaming and accommodate delegations. However, I believe that the administration is suggesting that we would consider this after the next council meeting. So I assume, and perhaps administration can assist me in my assumption, that they're already making arrangements with that delegation on how that they can work through a process to achieve our social distancing protocols while still accommodating that delegation for Tuesday.
Absolutely, Councillor Laird. Rick, I'm in CAO. So we have reached out to the delegation. As this building is currently closed to the public, the general public would not be attending, so it wouldn't be that open house, so to speak. But the delegation members have been contacted, asked if that would be okay, meet their expectations given the unusual circumstances. And the delegation has acknowledged that these are not normal times and they would like to proceed. So they would be coming in, but not the general public. It would be restricted down to the delegation.
And a subsequent question. My assumption is that the administration has talked to that delegation and asked them to limit their numbers so that we can achieve social distancing protocols.
Yes, we have. we did reach out and they've put their numbers down to 2.
Okay, so I see it as administration is already trying to mitigate this and to achieve our protocols. So I see no reason not to continue as recommended by council or by our administration for Tuesday. As for April, this is so fluid. We've seen how quickly this can change. The expectation from what I understand, and as I said, this information is changing not just daily, but a few times a day. We're likely to see a peak in 3 weeks, which puts us in that first meeting window. So I think we need to have options to either eliminate that one and or perhaps change it to a completely electronic meeting option. As for the one after that, I'd like to see us find a way to create one meeting in April if we must, and just put whatever we need to do as our priority, and maybe that's the middle ground. So those are just looking for options around how we can still maintain our governance duties and achieve at least the core services. So perhaps staff has got some suggestions.
Mr. Hagan?
I agree with Councillor Laird. I don't have any specific response to that. I just did want to identify for Council Lowe that we do have 2 key decision items coming up in the month of April. Would likely line up with the second meeting date in April, one of them being the audited financial statements. Administration will explore ways of doing that remotely as opposed to having the auditors come in. But we will need to go over them with council and answer any questions council has and look to approval of those statements. As well, the other critical item is the passing of the tax rate bylaw. And so we would be planning to bring that forward for what would normally be scheduled as the second meeting in April as well.
I think we should plan to have the 2 meetings in April. It's easy enough. If the situation points towards counseling, it's easy enough to cancel with, is 24 hours notice enough to cancel or even less? So we've got lots of leeway. There is business of the county that needs to get done, as Murray just pointed out. And I think we plan on business as normal as much as possible. And if the situation changes and we have to change, then we adapt. Any other comments on that? And I think also we prepare for the electronic meetings as well. But I do think it is important that we get together and try to have as normal a situation as possible. Because, you know, this might be a very deadly virus. But we as leaders have to be there and be examples for our community with the social distancing, but also we have to be present in the community to lead. And I think it's important that we gather here around this table. And if we can do it every 2 weeks, I think it's very important we do. Other comments? Councillor Lang?
Yeah, I agree with your position, Reeve Hoven. Today I feel quite comfortable with our distancing. I haven't heard one sneeze, one cough. We're all being very careful, so if things stay the same, I'm okay with this.
And if the situation changes, well, the situation changes and we adapt. Mr. Emmons?
If I may, Reeve Hoven, I wouldn't mind explaining to council at least my perspective, and I believe it comes with the support of the administrative team, because there is angst in around this, and we are quite comfortable, we are quite confident, because what we're doing right now is proactive and mitigation. If I may, I would like to compare this to an emergency, a typical emergency, fire, flood. you have your episode, it does the damage. A couple days later, you assess the damage and you spend months fixing the damage. This is totally flipped. What we're doing is the mitigation prior to hopefully prevent the damage and at minimum avert the emergency. And in this case, the emergency is overtaxing services. Keeping people doing what council is doing as our municipal leaders today is imperative, because that's what will alleviate the stress on our healthcare systems, on our doctors, on supplies, services. When those things get taxed, that's when we get into the emergency situation. So it's truly all about mitigation and proper protocols. And I hope that's what you hear administration putting into practice to protect our community and each other.
Thank you. Any further comments from council? Any further questions or direction necessary from administration? Councillor Vandermeer.
Yes, I'd just like to emphasize the importance that our IT department do prepare for the possibility that we would like to or have to conduct these meetings remotely. Just in case, you know, we need to make sure that's available to us. I hope we don't have to get to that point, but we must be prepared.
Excellent. We will move on then. Item number 4, closed sessions for discussion relating to and in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 197, and the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. 4.1, 2019-2020 Intermunicipal Mediation Verbal Report, FOIP S21, Disclosure Harmful to Intergovernmental Relations. Motion to move in camera. Or to move to a closed session. All in favor? Motion carries. 3:39 PM, and we are out of our closed session. We have one motion. Councillor Vandermeer?
Yes, I move that council extends the deadline for completion of a new Rocky Mountain Regional Solid Waste Authority agreement with the town of Rocky Mountain House and the village of Caroline to June 30th, 2020.
Any further discussion on the motion? I will ask the question. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. A motion to adjourn the meeting? All in favor? Motion carries. Have a good day, everyone.